It's official. Nephilim Free is out of his mind. Let me explain. In a moment of sheer boredom, I was clicking through Nephi's channel, and lo and behold, I came across this gem. Apparently, another user named GoGreen18 made a YouTube video with this premise. If God is omnipotent, why could he not create a world without evil or suffering? Well, Nephi lost almost no time going after the user in a dire tribe of straw men, proselytizing, and some particularly nasty ad-homs. But what he forgot to do along the way was address her argument. He starts out by arguing that it is impossible to describe God.
Yeah, you're going to define God for us, right? Something that humans can't truly comprehend, you're going to define it for us.
But only a few short moments later, anthropomorphizes God in what I see as a moment Freud would go nuts over.
God is all-loving? Now, what do you mean by all-loving? Do you think God loves all things? Well, certainly not. God doesn't love evil, doesn't love sin. He doesn't love acts of hatred or harmfulness, hurtfulness that people perpetrate upon each other.
So it's impossible to describe God. That's why only you can do it. Right, Nephi? Nephi later goes after GoGreen18's argument by employing one of the greatest Christian strawmen of all time, free will.
He wants us to come to him. We couldn't come to God, and we couldn't love God if he made us robots. If God made some imaginary, some perfect world where all we could possibly do is love God and want to be with him, then we would have no free will. We would not be intelligent agents on our own. We could choose nothing, and life would be meaningless and worthless. You would be a mindless nothing if God created such a world.
Free will has nothing to do with their argument, Nephi. She's saying that God, with all of his power, could create a world without evil but with free will. There's even precedent for this in your holy book. If God created humanity with free will, as you say, then a perfect world existed in the Garden of Eden without sin but with free will. It was only that pesky tree that got in the way. Without that, humanity would have been golden, having free will but existing without suffering or sin. Glazing over this straw man, Nephi eventually rants his way over to the origins of suffering, which he sees as a result of humans choosing sin in their capacity as agents of free will, or something like that.
You see, that's an act of evil conducted by man, not by God. The reason there are poor who suffer is because there are those who don't, who have more and suffer less. That's something man has done. That's not something God has done. Again, you're trying to blame God for what man does.
But let's take a moment to analyze this a little bit further. Nephilim is saying that sin is an inherited condition that we get from Adam and Eve, but almost immediately switches gears and seems to propose that suffering is the result of the choices we make.
The suffering in the world is a symptom of what man has done to God's creation, not what God has done.
However, there's something inherently wrong with this argument, because while it explains why God would punish evildoers, most of the suffering in this world is by innocent people. Children, people born into poverty and war. It doesn't explain why they are suffering.
The reason unfortunate people suffer in this world is because those who have the ability to do something about it are sinful. They are greedy. They're selfish. They're hateful.
Let's pursue both of these trains of thought and subsequently show both of them to be fallacious. Let us start by assuming that sin is an inherited condition, one passed from generation to generation as a consequence of the sin of Adam and Eve. Every human, presumably, is afflicted with this condition, without exception. Now, it doesn't take long to realize how simply unjust this position is. Common morality would dictate that punishment be limited to only those people who actually committed a crime. Examples of this from history would be instances of military officers during campaigns executing random townspeople in an effort to quell resistance. If such actions occurred during any modern conflict, those people would most assuredly be tried for war crimes, and rightly so. However, we apparently have God acting contrary to this moral principle. This must be impossible, of course. God, the source of all morality, can't himself be immoral, can he? The second situation must prove more solid. It simply has to. But unfortunately, it has its own problems. Now let us assume that sin and all subsequent suffering is the result of personal choice, that as a consequence of free will, humans have sin and suffering is the result of sin. Phew, Nephi may say. Problem solved. But not quite, Nephster. Let us take the case of someone without the capacity for any sort of choice, say, someone who is severely mentally retarded. Clearly, this person is suffering, if only because he or she lacks the capacity for higher thought and the enjoyments that come with that capacity. Now, it is obvious that this person's suffering is not caused by any act that they have committed, as they are clearly incapable of any willful action, nor is it inherited as part of the human experience, which we have already shown to violate the nature of God. So, what is causing this individual suffering? If it is neither inherited nor based on free choice, where does sin-caused suffering come from? I can only see two possibilities. Either sin is a law of the universe, and since it is assumed God created the universe, God must have therefore created sin and suffering, or God directly causes people to suffer as exemplified in the book of Job. So you see, Nephi, no matter which route you take, you cannot escape the logical fallacy that is sin, no matter how hard you try. You should also realize that when you try and debate rationalists, one requirement is that you actually make sense. The difference between a Christian sheep and a rationalist is that no amount of preaching will convince the reasoned. You have to actually make sense, something you seem incapable of doing. While that trick may work with you and your sheeple, it won't work on us. Oh, and good luck with that Thunderfoot debate. You may want to study up beforehand, but I have faith in you, buddy. Thanks for watching.